I'm actually excited to be on this side of the table for a change.
We have done the reverse, right? I've interviewed you, yeah.
Yes. Jeff Jordan here from Andreessen Horowitz. This is a figure who's came from the CEO world. He was at OpenTable, he was at PayPal, and then he sits on, as he would say, too many boards. So he's made the transition from CEO to an investor, and hopefully you guys get a lot of insight from this. And as always, I always say thank you. Thanks, Jeff, for being here, and also thanks for this guy right here was basically my introduction to the tech world after being rejected by so many people. He graciously helped me out and got myself and Rudy on the right path. So to kick things off, as the conversation states, can you share with us a little bit about your career and ultimately how you started investing and making the transition from CEO to investor?
Yeah, my career, it took me a while to find technology. I graduated from business school and worked in strategy roles at a strategy company at the Walt Disney Company. And as I was at Disney in the late 90s, and business was going really well, but this internet thing was starting, and I got an itch to jump in the internet thing. And so left Disney and took a job with a terrible company called Real.com up in Portland, Oregon. It is now, it was out of business within about a year of my joining. And the time was so ridiculously stupid. They were filing to go public. And I'm CEO of the company filing to go public. And I said, this is the worst company I've ever seen. And I leave the company right in front of an IPO while the bubble's still expanding, and the company was out of business 4 months later. It's just like, filing to go public, not. So, but what that did, it got me back into technology. And I just loved the world. And the woman who hired me at eBay was Meg Whitman, who was then running, the woman who hired me at Disney was Meg Whitman, who then ran eBay. And so when she heard I was available, since this company was such a dog, she invited me to come and join eBay. So I joined eBay when it was about 200 people. I was managing 2 people, and 7 years later it was 11,000 people, and I was managing 6,000 people. So that, it was an amazing introduction to Silicon Valley. So that went from there to PayPal to OpenTable, and they all are pretty common businesses, and that they kind of are network effect businesses where the more restaurants you have, the more interesting it is to consumers. The more consumers you have, the more interesting it is to restaurants. And so they spin up. So I loved those kinds of companies, and they did well. But over time, I found I'd managed technology companies for 15 years, which is exhilarating and rewarding on many fronts and completely exhausting. And I looked around, I said there was no other CEO gig I wanted. I'd kind of done it. And so I loved technology companies, and I was tired of being a CEO. So a couple of the venture firms reached out and said, hey, do you want to be an investor? So I'm like, that's interesting. I could do that on my own, or I could do that as part of a firm. And I ended up doing it as part of a firm because I didn't know what I didn't know. And I thought it would be a modest learning experience. I'm working at the same companies just from a different role. Mm-hmm. It was really different. There was a huge learning curve. And that actually what I wanted. I wanted something that was new and challenging, and most importantly, had a scorecard.
So what were some of the biggest things you learned, or that you took from being a CEO, and you applied that to being a better investor?
Well, the best thing that I think I took was the kind of companies I worked at look a lot like the kind of companies I invest in. So, eBay looks, from a business perspective, a lot like Airbnb. Mm-hmm. And Instacart looks a lot like OpenTable. They're the same kind of business models. And so I think being an investor, being an operator of those kinds of companies helped me appreciate when early stage companies had that potential. So that decision making helped a lot. But I didn't know shit about being an investor. And so I made so many mistakes. My most prominent one, it was a company called Fab.com. Mm-hmm. I don't know if you remember Fab. Fab raised about $300 million and went from $1 billion valuation to a dollar valuation in about a year. And that is a humbling thing to go through. And one of the things we've talked about in venture capital, half the deals don't work. Mm-hmm. For the best investors, half the deals don't work. And so, but it's just having something like that happen under your watch is not fun.
And I think that's something that we try to tell the athletes is that know your risk and, know what a good batting average is in the tech world.
And diversification.
Diversification. So what advice would you have for new investors who are trying to get into the space, and what advice would you give to the guys who are just starting off, who only have a few investments that are looking to be more active?
Yeah, I mean, early on, only invest money you can lose. You can stand to lose. It's just
Say that again.
early on, only invest the money you can stand to lose, because it will. The best performing funds, half the deals don't work, and so the best performing funds have the best access to deal flows. The best companies come to us, and so if we're seeing the best companies, and our batting average is 500. If you're just seeing, I saw 10 companies. If you've seen 10 companies and you pick 3. We'll see 3,000 companies, and we'll pick 30. And so you just got to be wary that, one, it's a high risk investment. 2 is the harder someone's asking you for money, the more suspicious you should be. Because the best things, you're trying to get them to take your money. The worst things typically can't raise money, so they're looking elsewhere and they're asking for your money. So when people are just banging on you, asking for your money, it's just, for me, that's a negative. Just like, no, sorry, I don't do unsolicited, things. And then the biggest thing is, the more companies you see, the smarter you're going to be. And so you got to figure out how can you get your personal deal flow going. Because I remember I was pretty active as an angel before I became a venture investor, and I had a portfolio of like 12 investments, and I was feeling pretty good. I would have funded 11 of the first 12 deals I saw at Andreessen Horowitz when I was an individual, because I didn't have the access to that deal flow. Mm-hmm. And so you need to figure out, how do I get in front of that, get involved in this world. I mean, you've done a good job. People know you're interested in investing. They'll seek you out. But until you get a real deal flow going, it's pretty dicey. So you should probably make the checks pretty small and try to. You're better off doing 5 small checks than 1 big check, because I thought every company I invested in was going to be good. A lot weren't.
And I think that's something that is the downside of of an athlete, of people knowing how much money you're bringing in every year. So they're knocking on the door pretty constantly. So I feel like that's always something that the approach I've tried to take is try to invest a little bit in a lot, as opposed to investing a lot into a little. And as far as athletes, who have you seen? Any athletes that you've seen doing it the right way, as far as being in the right places, investing in the right companies, branding themselves so these startups know, if we need an athlete, influencer, who can we go at?
Right. I mean, not just because you're here, you're a best practice. Because 2 years ago, I was interviewing him on stage. Now it's flipped. I was invited a couple years ago to the Morgan Stanley conference. It's all exclusive. It's really cool. I'm feeling cool. And it's like, who's speaking? Andre? And you're just like, okay. The student and the teacher thing is switched. He's now out in front of me. So I really think you and Rudy have done a really good job of getting in the ecosystem, knowing people, creating awareness that you're in business. I think KD's done a really nice job on that too. Just, I'm here, I'm open for business. I've done my homework, which was one of the things I told you early on. You got to do the homework. Right. He's done his homework. He shows up prepared. People know he's in the market, and as a result, his deal flow is improved over time.
Right. And we have a lot of athletes who aren't in the Bay Area, so they find it particularly a little bit harder to find deal flow. Or
that was you in Philadelphia, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Or just knowing who to get in contact with. What are some of any advice for those guys who may be in Orlando or a smaller market, Charlotte, or who are looking to gain access? It's a little bit tougher.
No. I think there's a hierarchy of how hard it's going to be. Bay Area is really good, Seattle's really good, Austin's good. Toronto's not bad. Then I think when you get into Charlotte and Orlando, you're probably on the other end of it. Mm-hmm. Every market has somebody that is doing venture. Really, I think it's Bull City in North Carolina is making investments, and they're pretty smart, and they're just so. Part of it is just trying to network into who are the interesting people around. The other is when you travel, take advantage of it. You know, I've done a number of events out here. We sometimes host when athletes are in town if they have a sincere interest, and you know, we appreciate what they're looking at. We'll invite them in and introduce them to companies and things like that. But the benefit of when you're in town and you have some free time, try to take advantage of it.
Well, speaking of you investing in, I just saw a piece you did with CNBC where you were speaking on you don't necessarily invest in a company, you invest in the entrepreneur. Yeah. And the question was, what do you look for in companies or partnerships? But I should say, what are you looking for in an entrepreneur that will make you invest in them?
It's funny, when I first joined, I'm more comfortable with a later stage investment because there's numbers you can look at, and I'm a numbers guy. So then I thought, okay, the entrepreneur is important early, but then, you know, less important later. That was wrong. The entrepreneur is the most important thing in every investment you're making. And it's a weird business in that we'll make tens of millions of dollars investment in a person's company based on a couple hours of interaction. I mean, it's a little terrifying when you think about it, where, you know, kind of they come in and pitch, you spend an hour, and then if you're interested, you go to their office, you spend 2 hours, and then you do some follow-up, you spend an hour. So 4 hours or something, you're saying, okay, I'm gonna write a $50 million check. And so what you're looking for is someone who has a unique vision of the world that's different than everyone else's vision, but they can explain to you why it's a compelling vision. Unbelievable persistence, because the only thing that is guaranteed in the startup world is things go wrong. I mean, they go wrong at the best companies all the time. I mean, look at what Facebook right now. Holy cow.
Right.
And then I use storytelling as the shorthand, because you have to convince people of your vision. You have to convince investors. You have to convince employees. You have to convince partners, press, you know, of that. And so, you know, that combination is there. What's the hardest part about the job is the distance between a impassioned, compelling person with a great vision of the world and a megalomaniac who won't listen to you ever, won't listen to advice, is so short.
Right.
And so that 4 hours, you're trying to look into someone's soul and say, you know, which are you? Are you, you know, the good little angel, or the, you know, horrible little devil? And that the mistake you make is you invest in the devil, you know, and right. You usually know it about 2 weeks later.
Right.
Yeah.
What are you particularly excited about or finding interesting these days regarding new companies you're working with, or new trends or emerging areas you're looking into?
Yeah, it's interesting. I focus on consumer investing, and the best thing is, so I joined Andreessen Horowitz as the smartphone was exploding, which created all kinds of opportunity. Mm-hmm. I mean, you couldn't do Lyft and Uber without a smartphone. You can't do Instacart without a smartphone. You know, Pinterest is mobile first, so created huge opportunities. So for 5 years, I've been an investor in LL over 7 years. So the first 4 years, I was pretty busy because all this opportunity is coming. Slowed down in the consumer side after the smartphone. Mm. The tablet never really spawned the same kind of businesses, and so I went from making like 4 or 5 investments a year to, there was a 2-year period I didn't make any, and so now it's kind of back. But the couple I've done recently, who's seen the Lime scooters running around your neighborhood? Yes, that's good. That one's doing. It's a 14-month-old company that's raised $400 million. That's a little unusual, but it's coming along. And then the one I announced last week was Wonder School, which is Airbnb for preschools. So there aren't enough preschools in the country, and so they're taking educators, and they're saying, we're going to help you open a preschool in your home, all the licensing, all the curriculum, all the safety stuff. And they're taking educators who make $30,000 or $40,000, and their earning potential with a preschool in their home is $150,000 to $200,000. Wow! And so, as a result, lots of people are in the market. The couple markets they're in, they're opening a lot more preschools, which is making parents much more happy because educational outcomes are positively correlated with preschool. So one of the few things that most experts agree work in education is if you get a quality preschool education, it helps you get launched into school. So, compelling young entrepreneur named Chris Bennett. I hope he's this shoulder and not this shoulder. Right. So far, I'm feeling good.
Right. Well, for those you don't know, Jeff is a big basketball fan, and he plays a lot of basketball too. I've been in his office. He has a lot of different jerseys up there. Growing up, who were some of your favorite athletes? And on the flip side, who were some of the business folks who you looked up to as well?
Athletes is easy. I grew up in Philadelphia. Dr. J, Julius Erving, was such an unbelievably compelling player and an incredibly compelling man. And so he was really easy to root for. So they only won one championship, but they were competitive for a long time, and that was really fun. Business is harder. Probably one of the most formative ones was Michael Eisner at Disney, the CEO of Disney, who had a mixed track record. For the first 10 years, he was a complete genius. And in the next 10 years, the glow faded. He had a tougher second year. So his legacy now is like, he did okay, but I learned so much from him. And the guy, he was so unbelievably talented that he has flaws. We all have flaws.
Right.
He could bring it. He took a company that was worth a couple $1 billion and made it worth $70 billion or something in 7 years.
And we were just talking in the back about books, and I'm big on, if you want to get some knowledge, find a book and figure it out. So for a lot of athletes in here, we got some really big readers. Are there any books that you think will help with investing, or with how to? We just talk about on the bets.
On the bets, yeah. So with the being an investor, on the investing side, the two best books I know are my partner Ben Horowitz's book, The Hard Thing About Hard Things. If you want to know about what it's like to actually work in one of these companies, that'll tell you what. The other one is Peter Thiel's book, From Zero to One. Peter was the founder of PayPal, and now he manages a lot of money. He was the first institutional money into Facebook, which you can guess was probably a pretty good investment. But very thoughtful articulation on what works. Basically, one of his big theses is you're trying to invest in monopolies. If you're not investing in a monopoly, you're investing in competitive business, you're going to get your lunch eaten. And I have 7 years of investing. I think that's probably the most important lesson I learned is if you can't differentiate yourselves from your competitors, it's going to get a lot of revenue, but it might not work. E-commerce has been that. It's so hard to differentiate yourself from your competitors. Meal kits did that. Restaurant delivery. I mean, incredible growth, but how did they ever make money? Because they were competing with 12 other people. So Peter Thiel's a good one. Personally, I'm reading two books. One is Making Superman. It's about how the flow state has driven unbelievable improvements in the performance of extreme athletes. They're like, it took 25 years for the mile to drop 3 seconds. These guys are like going twice as fast, twice as far in like 10 years. And they're talking to the athletes, describing, what's happening. And they go, I get in this state, everything slows down. Mm-hmm. I can see and it's such an interesting description of, and the author then tries to say, what's human potential if you can marshal this state? Right. And, more often, there's a bunch of tech companies trying to figure out how do we get flow for engineers and things like that. But it's a pretty good book. The other one is Thinking in Bets. It's a professional poker player, a woman, who just poker and investing have a whole lot in common because you're just making a probability bet on an outcome. And, sometimes you make a good bet and it doesn't work. Sometimes you make a bad bet and it does work. And it's trying to get in the process where you think more about it as you don't conflate that investment worked with I'm a genius. Because, you might have, it might not have been a good bet. I was joking with Andre, Lime is really hot, it's cool, I'm really psyched to be involved. I bet in a dockless bike sharing company, a pedal bike sharing company a year ago. It went okay, and then somehow they came across this e-bike thing, and it just blew up. So I would say, I didn't necessarily make a good bet. I mean, it might have been a good bet, but if it works, it's on something I didn't even think of. Right. And so I can't say I'm a genius because I made that investment. It might work out, but it's an interesting book trying to separate the decision from the outcome and how to improve the decision. And so I'm enjoying that. That was a Mark Andreessen recommendation.
Gotcha. And I'm reading the book on Peter Thiel.
Oh, yeah.
Conspiracy.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah,
I just
yeah.
finished that. You want to? Oh, okay. You want to get a book that will teach you humility in investing? Bad Blood, the
yes.
Theranos story.
Yes.
And so, I mean, I just told you we spend 4 or 5 hours with an entrepreneur before making the bet. This woman is incredibly convincing. I met with her late.
All women are.
And it was just like, I believed. And then you're reading the book and you're like, whoa.
Right.
And so, I'm relying on the representations these entrepreneurs are making. Most are really high integrity and are playing the game like it's supposed to be played.
Right.
And then you get, if this story is indeed true, it's a reported story, but man, is it terrifying. So that, before you write a check, read the book.
Right. Got it. Well, I got 2 quick things before we finishing up. We have athletes here, so they have their day job.
Yep.
Where the majority of the time is spent within their playing field. But they do also have aspirations when they're done playing, and you want to try to merge the two towards the later stages of your career. And as you see with some of our smarter players, such as Jaylen Brown, are doing it in the early stages of their career, where they're managing their time really well.
Well, he has to catch up. He went to Cal. Sorry, Stanford guy.
So the question is, how do you deal with the balance, from being a CEO and then being an investor, having a family, and having so many deals? How do you not burn yourself out, I should say, and then having the right type of balance for yourself?
It's been. My wife will tell you I'm not very good at this.
Mine too.
I tend to overcommit and get involved. I think part of it is to being really thoughtful on what your priorities are, and trying to use your time to the best. I mean, I'm friends with a number of athletes. Harrison Phillips just got drafted by the Bills. One of the most intelligent, compelling guy I know. He's going to get every summer. He's going to get a half-time job in a different industry. So to understand, because at halftime, because he has to work out and get better and do all the things, but he can only work out how many hours a day. So he's then, he's going to use his celebrity to get indoors. That then, he's going to say, okay, what's investment banking like? Okay, what's venture capital like? And trying to, proactively figure it out. But it's going to come at the cost of a lot of video game time and whatever else he's doing.
Right.
So if it's important to you, got to prioritize it and got to figure out how am I going to invest in it.
It kind of answers my second question as far as, we always want the athlete to know how hard it is to be successful. And you kind of said it, he's setting himself up by having a halftime job. He's going to all these
He's trying.
things.
He's trying.
And he's starting to figure it out, and he's already got his footsteps working. But, just how hard it is. It's similar to being an athlete, I should say.
It's similar to
What's our percentages? What's our percentages of being professional athletes? It's like 0.0001. It's only 450 of us, and there's 8 billion people on the planet. It's similar to being a successful.
Top VCs.
Top VCs.
Yeah.
Similar. So with that, I want to thank you.
Oh, thank you.
Appreciate your time and the knowledge, and thank you guys for listening.
Appreciate it.